So we've gone through the installation of the Azure AD Connect tool, and we've done so using the Express settings. And primarily, as I just mentioned about, we're going to be using this for password synchronization, or how we're going to configure our users to be able to use a simpler or a single or a same sign-on option. And with that said, we have a few different configuration options that we can choose from using the Azure AD Connect tool. The first one is the password synchronization. That's the same sign-on because the passwords are synchronized and stored encrypted or as hash values. And these are used to authenticate from the cloud. So all the authentication, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, occurs from the cloud. Now, if we use pass-through authentication, it's the opposite. Same sign-on, but authentication occurs from on-prem Active Directory. So the difference is where the credentials are stored and where they're being authenticated. We also have the Active Directory Federation Services. This is where the users are directed to the on-prem ADFS environment for a single sign-on and authentication. So now we're, instead of same sign-on, we're moving from the same sign-on that we talked about in the previous two bullets to a single sign-on that's authenticated from your on-prem ADFS configuration. We also have Do Not Configure. We're not using Active Directory. We're not using password synchronization, pass-through authentication, or ADFS. We're using something external like a third-party federation server. So we do have that as an option as well. And if we've configured an Active Directory environment with Office 365, it's going to detect it's not a third-party federation server, and this option is not going to be available to you. One other option you have on there is called the single sign-on, or the enabling of single sign-on, and that's a checkbox. And this is going to be available when using password synchronization or pass-through authentication that we talked about above. But in order for us to configure this, it's going to require a domain-joined machine with a direct connection to your domain controller to allow that configuration. And for additional information on these options, as well as several other options that are available with the Azure AD Connect that are related to the custom installation, I suggest that you search the internet for custom installation of Azure AD Connect and browse to that article. There's a great article by Microsoft that provides you this additional information. Now, one last topic that we want to talk about before we go back into a demo in Azure AD Connect, and that is going to be what's called soft match filtering. And soft match filtering comes into play when you have a user who has an account on-prem and in the cloud, and instead of trying to maintain the two different accounts, we're going to want to sync the properties between the two. So whatever properties are in Office 365 that aren't on-prem, we're going to sync those up. Whatever's on-prem that's not in the cloud, we're going to sync those up. And that way they're not trying to manage multiple accounts. And these accounts are going to be considered a match because of the mailbox of the user in Office 365. It's going to use the Exchange SMTP mailbox address to determine if it's a match. And if it's a match found between on-prem and Office 365, that additional information synchronization is going to take place between on-prem and Office 365 and Office 365 and on-prem. And then if there is a conflict, if by chance both on-prem and Office 365 has a display name, the on-prem Active Directory display name is going to take precedence over the one in Office 365. Now, once they've all matched up and we've shared the properties between the two of them, what's going to happen is we're going to create a source anchor, which is really just an object GUID, globally unique identifier, and that's going to be an assigned primary attribute that's going to link those two accounts together once it's been determined that they're a match. Now, we have a tool that we can use to manage the synchronization process. It's called the Synchronization Service Manager. This is where I can go in and create custom filtering, and this is where I can keep an eyeball peeled on the synchronization between Active Directory and Office 365, because there are logs in there that I can view, and by viewing these logs, I can determine if there's any issues with the synchronization.